Greetings, beloved, and welcome to this edition of On the Living Edge. Dr. Mark Chironna here. Thank you for stopping by. As we move into this new year, I want to just thank all of our Edge partners for your ongoing faithfulness and support. You are the difference that makes the difference, and we could not do what we're doing without you, and it's bearing fruit all over the planet. Thank you. Beloved, we're in this brand new series, The Malaise and the Mystery, Prophetic Wisdom from Ecclesiastes, and particularly from the preacher, the son of David, Solomon, who was called Kohelet. We're going to begin to look at the collapse of the horizon of agency and transcendence and what that means for you and I in this lesson. Open your heart, open your mind, open up to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and let's begin with there's a time for every purpose under heaven. Saints, as we come now to this second installment in the Malaise and the Mystery, Prophetic Wisdom from Ecclesiastes, I want to hang what I'm about to say on this phrase, a time for everything, which you already know is from Ecclesiastes, living within limits. We're going to look at portions of Ecclesiastes 3, Ecclesiastes 4, Ecclesiastes 5, Ecclesiastes 6, and some other related psalms. And the horizons, we talked about the 7 horizons in the first lesson. We're going to look at 3 of them specifically here: agency, well-being, and belonging. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 8, there are very familiar verses that Peter, Paul, and Mary sang in my generation, and that song has gone around the world. To everything turn, turn, turn. There's a season, turn, turn, and a time for every purpose under heaven. Now, we misread that profoundly because the popular reading sounds like reassurance. It sounds like balance. It sounds like your season is coming. The rhythm of life is celebrated. But the actual context, if you read it in context, you discover this is tied to vanity of vanity, hevel, vaporless. It follows the declaration of vanity, immediately precedes the question. Here's the question: what gain has the worker from all his toil? What gain? The real point of what he's saying, what Kohelet, the preacher, the son of David, is saying, is the times exist, but they're not ours to control. Interesting. A time to be born. You didn't choose when. A time to die. You don't know when. A time to plant. The harvest isn't guaranteed. A time to weep. It may outlast your endurance. That's what this whole poem is saying. The poem isn't celebrating human mastery of time. It's naming human subjection to time. The times happen to us. Agency operates within a framework we did not create. So let's talk about the horizon of agency, the capacity to act under pressure. The question needs to be restated that Solomon, the preacher, Kohelet, says in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 9, what gain has the worker from his toil? Well, here's his theological grounding in verse 14. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it, so the people fear before him. What's the insight? The structure of existence is designed to produce the fear of the Lord, not terror, but proportion. We bump against divine sovereignty so that we can remember again and again who's the creator and who's the creature. Our modern resistance to this, even in the church, everything in contemporary culture resists this. Self-help, you can control your outcomes. Prosperity gospel, speak it into existence. Technology, the illusion of mastery over nature. Therapy culture, you are in charge of your healing. The crash, the collapse, when the illusion of control meets reality, we can face illness, loss, failure, and death. The unprepared soul is devastated, not just by the circumstance, but by the exposure of their fantasy that they held on to, their magical thinking that failed them. So the eternity problem in Ecclesiastes 3:11, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity, olam, into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. There's the paradox, and there's the tension. Olam in the heart, eternity in the heart. We're wired for transcendence. We're wired for comprehensive meaning. We're wired to see the big picture, but we can't find it out. Somehow access is blocked. The preacher is saying, I've got this sense of something, but I can't get there. Now, the answer is ultimately in Christ. But if you think you never are exposed to these things, if you never lived them, you also think that Romans 7 is just about what Paul went through, not about what you go through. The good that I would, I do not. Well, but for those of us that actually live life, we can still relate to Romans 7 from time to time. The good that I would not, I do. So now we're talking about agency and will. There are times my will collapses. I'm slow on the uptake. I'm not as committed to saying yes as I need to be because I have built-in resistors. And so this is not a design flaw. It's the condition of creaturely existence. We long for what we cannot reach. We're built for the horizon we can't see. Have you ever noticed the closer you get to the horizon on a highway, the further away it gets? We're built for a horizon we can't see. And so the horizon of transcendence is present as longing. It's present as longing, but it's absent as access. It's present as longing, but it's absent as access. We know there's more, but we can't get there. The ache is structural. We're in the box, but we can't get out of the box. And then we've got to deal in the midst of all of that with what he talks about in chapter 4, verses 1 to 3. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. And on the side of their oppressors there was power, and there was no one to comfort them. Now, that's a tough verse to unpack. You want to say, well, what kind of comfort do the oppressors need? That's a big question. It's really complex and not easy to answer. And I'm not going to spend this teaching trying to go there. I just want you to realize this is tough stuff to do theologically. This is about the pressure of injustice. So what Koholoth does not do, what the preacher, what the son of David, what Solomon, the supposed wise, doesn't do, he doesn't explain the injustice. He doesn't offer an explanation why a good God allows evil. And he doesn't promise resolution. What does he do? He observes, he bears witness, and he names. That's all he can do. He refuses to look away from the pain of the paradox. He lets the injustice stand and make a statement. And what's the verdict? Verses 2 and 3. And I thought the dead who are already dead more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. This is pretty bleak and dismal. This is like nihilism, but I think it's in the scripture for our benefit. The key insight is this is not him being depressed. This is not clinical depression. He's being honest and he's reckoning with unremedied evil. This is perhaps the most difficult question every genuine follower of Jesus has to cope with, not only in their own lives, but with the lost. If God is so good, and we have all our supposed explanations, but the Bible actually leaves us hanging. We're going to get to the book of Job in this series. Solomon leaves us hanging, and even Jesus lets us wrestle with this stuff, and the book of Revelation lets us wrestle with it. Because there's 1,001 theodicies. Theodicies are theological explanations for why a good God allows evil. And they're tough to work through. And every one of us knows people or ourselves who have been through stuff that didn't make a lick of sense, and we didn't get the answers. And those of you that are control freaks that think you can confess your way out of it, knock yourself out, and when you're ready to relax and realize you can't change everything, grace will come. And so the key insight here, again, is that it's not depression speaking. He's being honest. He's reckoning with unremedied evil. And he validates, listen carefully, the preacher is validating those who suffer without relief. He is prophetically seeing what's going on, and he's validating people who are suffering, even though there's no relief. He's validating them. He sees them in their suffering. What's the connection to the horizon of agency? Well-being and agency collapse together when injustice persists and cannot be addressed. And then we've got to look at what he says in verses 7 and 8, because now we're dealing with the pressure of isolation. Again, I saw hevel, vanity, but it's really vaporless. It's not moral. It's this expression of this is vaporless. It has no substance. I saw hevel under the sun, one person who has no other, either son or brother, yet there's no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches. For who am I toiling and depriving myself of my pleasure? This also is hevel and an unhappy business. This is about the solitary striver. We have these people in our lives. They're successful, but they're all alone. They're achieving, but they're not achieving for anybody. And that is a very modern archetype. Just go scrolling on Instagram and go scrolling on Twitter on all the people that promise you can be a billionaire. And just look at some of their lives in the process. There's this sense in which what Solomon gets to in verses 9 and 12 is two are better than one. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe unto him who is alone when he falls. And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Belonging is not a solution to the vanity, to the hevel. It's how we survive it together. Belonging isn't a solution. It's how we survive it together. The cord still frays, even as a threefold cord. Both partners still die, but we bear the weight together. And so the connection to the horizon, belonging as a survival strategy within the limits, includes the fact that we're aware that we're in limits and we can't escape from them. Then he goes on to talk about worship. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven and you are on the earth. Therefore, let your words be few. What's the principle? Simple. God's in heaven, you're on earth. The temptation to resist, approaching God as a peer, as your BFF, as a partner in negotiation, as one who must be convinced or informed. The chattering worship that fills silence with noise. I wish I had time to go into how this is playing out in the current culture. But listen carefully. Proportion is liberating. If you're not God, you don't bear God's burden. Just ask Jim Carrey when he had to play the role of God in the movie. If the universe doesn't depend on you, you can rest. The right reverence produces the right freedom. You can resign as manager of the universe. What's the connection to Isaiah chapter 8, verse 13? The Lord of hosts, him you shall regard as holy. Let him be your fear, your reverence, and let him be your dread. The fear of the Lord is the antidote to all other fears. When God is properly revered, when God is properly feared, lesser fears will lose their grip. And so then he goes on in chapter 5, he's the wealthiest man on the planet, but now he's going to critique wealth. Verse 10, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. He's talking about instability. He's observing instability, but I would argue he's not just observing it out there. He's honestly observing it in his own heart. He's becoming incredibly self-aware, which is an important aspect of growth and maturity. In verse 5:11, when goods increase, they increase who consume them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? So now you've got consumption without benefit. We are just ending the Christmas season. I have grandkids. My littlest one is already bored with one of the toys I bought him just 2 weeks ago and put under the tree. He's growing up in a consumer culture. Listen, as he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil. That's verses 15 and 16. That's the final accounting, something that we often don't think about in our younger years, but the older we get, as we become aware that we are mortal and our days are going to end, it changes the way we see life, and hopefully it changes the way we live life. And then he goes on in chapter 6 to talk about all the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. If you remember in the garden, what got Adam and Eve in trouble was their appetite. What led them to what becomes sin and death is their appetite. So he's talking about unfulfilled appetite in Ecclesiastes chapter 6. So what has this got to do with this focus on the critique of wealth? Well, he's saying very clearly, and again, this is the wealthiest man on the planet, wealth cannot satisfy because the appetite is infinite and the goods are finite. The horizon of well-being cannot be secured by accumulation. What's the connection? Well, this is about being on the treadmill of hedonism in the current culture. It's about the insatiability of desire. We never get enough. Which is why if your emails are like mine, any place you have ever shopped where you give your email for your receipts, they email you not just once a month or when certain shopping occasions, they email you every single day. I have consigned many of those emails to my junk pile so I don't have to see them when they come through in regular mail. However, sometimes they get through. But we are being fed based on the insatiability of desire that's out of control. And then sociologically, we're dealing with how empty consumer culture is. Now, David has something to say about this. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. This is Solomon's daddy. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. There's a major difference between David as father and Solomon as son here. The image that David is unpacking here is that of a nursing child. And nursing children are frantic, they're demanding, they're grasping, and there's an urgent need for constant feeding. A weaned child, on the other hand, is calm, is present, and is at rest. The need has been transformed into trust. Listen carefully. Maturity doesn't make you invulnerable to temptation or to the passions that can run amok. Maturity is your capacity to be present without grasping. It's your ability to rest with whatever is mothering you and nurturing you without demanding mother's milk. Very important. What David is refusing here is a heart that's lifted up, that's grandiosity, that's hubris, that's self-importance, eyes raised too high, ambition beyond our place. Paul tells us in Romans to have a sober and sane estimate and appraisal of who we are. When our eyes are raised too high, we think way too highly of ourselves. And Christopher Lash's famous work from the late 1970s is still applicable today on the culture of narcissism. Listen, he says, and I don't involve myself in things too great for me. Occupying with things too great is claiming knowledge or control beyond human capacity. What's the connection to the horizon of agency here? Our capacity to act is that agency, if it's going to be reopened, has to be transformed. We have to move from grasping to receiving. Hold on tight with an open hand. We have to move from demanding outcomes to faithful presence. Psalm 139, another Psalm of David, one of my favorites. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's too high. I cannot attain to it. What's David acknowledging? God's knowledge is utterly comprehensive. Ours is not. And that's wonderful, not threatening. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. David doesn't rage against the limit. He marvels at it. The vastness of God's knowledge is not oppressive, it's precious. This is the sweet psalmist of Israel. He's not driven to the degree that his son was driven. What's the connection to the horizons of agency and transcendence here that are held together? We cannot attain, beloved, God's knowledge, but we're known by God. And that relationship holds what our cognition cannot. Now, how about Christ and our creaturely limits? The incarnation reminds us that the eternal Son entered time, space, and the limitations of the human body. And then he grew up. He increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. He experienced genuine human development even at the same time as being God. He lived a life of dependence. He had to pray. He had to sleep. He had to eat. Those are the marks of creaturely existence. He did that for us and as us. And he experienced constraint. I can do nothing on my own, except I see my Father doing it, John 5. The Son chose utter dependence on his Father. What were the temptations? Turn the stones to bread, escape the limits of hunger. Throw yourself down from the temple, escape the limits of danger. Worship me just once, escape the limits of patient obedience. Christ's refusal, he will be human all the way, no shortcuts. Gethsemane, not my will, but yours. Agency submitted to the Father's timing. What's the key insight? Christ doesn't escape creaturely limits. He lives within them faithfully for us and as us, so he can give his Spirit to us at the resurrection. And in doing so, he redeems all of it. Limitations are not our enemy. They are the terrain of our salvation. And what does that produce if we become present as faithful presence? Truth-telling without limits, refusal to occupy ourselves with things too great, a handful of quiet. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and striving after wind. Solomon says that at the end. Receiving life as a gift, the move from grasping to open hands. Receiving the day, receiving people, receiving our limits, and faithful presence, not frantic striving, not passive withdrawal, showing up, doing the next appropriate thing, loving the people in front of us, and leaving the outcomes to God. Beloved, as always, we come to this point in the broadcast, and as we do, as this new year starts, I want us to be able to put our best foot forward in reaching the nations for Jesus. This month, for your love gift of $38, I want to put in your hands this brand new series, The Malaise and the Mystery. The collapse of the 7 horizons that I talk about is so significant for where we are in the culture and where we are in Jesus and how Jesus wants to reopen them, that you're going to want to listen to this again and again and share it with your friends and your loved ones. Get the message out there. Your $38 will go a long way to helping us do what God's given us to do around the world, and God will bless you for it. Your love gift makes a difference and is the difference that does make that difference. You can have this in CD, DVD, or MP3, your choice. If you're moved on to sow an additional $20, for $58, I will also include a 2-hour content-rich webinar that I just did, What Kind of Confession is Actually Good for the Soul? And I will take you on a deep dive on what Scripture says about confession, and I'll share it with you from a theological perspective, a psychological perspective and from a perspective of lived experience. It's rich, it's powerful, it's expansive, it's transforming, it's healing. You're going to want it in your library. You can also have that in a way that's conducive to the way you want to hear it and see it. And finally, for a love gift of $78, I have a brand new book that's in PDF form, and it's called Coming Home: 7 Paths to the Life You Already Have. This is about those 7 horizons I've taught on in a way that takes you on a journey of homecoming from the inside out and shows you step by step how those horizons are reopened in your life as you put yourself in a position to allow grace to reopen them. 177 pages worth of rich content. You won't be disappointed. Beloved, this is a moment for you to participate with us. Sow your best love gift, 38, 58, 78, and let me respond and say thank you accordingly. Call now, sow now. Happy New Year. Beloved pastors, if you're in a place where you're desiring input and mentoring on how to navigate the turbulent waters we're in, and you want to be more furnished in what you are called to do and be, as you lead a congregation into the fullness of God's grace, I invite you to participate in my Engage Pastors Fellowship. You can click on that link and it'll take you to tell you all that it's about. We would enjoy having you as part of the journey. Click on that link. We'll see you there.